episode 24, our favorite underrated movies.
Welcome to the Visionary Variety Podcast, where we cover cool stuff like photo, video, film, books, and technology. So, switch on your brain and enjoy the show. Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about our favorite underrated movies. And today I have Daniel Grove, guy that's living on a prayer.
Yo, yo.
And Angela Brock, the girl who's living in an uptown world.
Hello.
And myself, Nate Gunn, the guy living La Vida Loca.
All right, we're going to be talking about movies that really stand out to us in a unique way. That, you know, we see it as a really great, solid movie that should be loved and liked by many. But unfortunately, these movies, in some aspect or another, did not quite get the attention that we felt they deserved. And that can be because of a variety of reasons, you know, marketing or bad timing, or maybe just the story was a little weird or out of the box. But I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about these movies. But before you get into that, Nate, didn't you go into a spaceship recently? What was that about?
Yeah, so I have been going to a plasma donation, which looks like a spaceship, at least inside. It's just a shopping strip. Which
A blood-sucking spaceship.
sounds shady in a shopping strip.
Interesting.
But when you go inside, it's like all these bays and stuff, and you have like your own personal like lounge, huge chair, and they stick needles in you and they distract, like they pull stuff that they want out of your body and they pay you for it. So,
Oh, gosh.
but
Are you sure this is legit?
yeah, no, it's true. It sounds shady.
It's sounding more and more shady the more you talk
but
about
you know
it.
what's shady about it is it's in a strip mall. The name is weird to say, but it says plasma on it. It's like, I don't even know how to say the name. I could spell it out some other time. But yeah, but it's a lot of fun. You basically go and you answer all these really hard questions. That's like a screening that you have to do every time you go in. You get your finger pricked, which hurts like heck.
Like, have you ingested anyone else's blood recently?
Or yeah, pretty much.
No.
Or
Check yes or no. Do you have any deadly diseases that will kill everyone that we give your blood to?
well, like they ask questions like have you left the United States in the last 8 weeks? And I'm like, no. So they get real personal.
Not that I know of.
Well, I guess the weirdest part is like, at least in the beginning part, they kept asking me the question if I've ever, like a lot of like love questions. And I was like, look, I've already answered these questions. I was just here a couple days ago. The answer's still no.
We have to make sure that all that stuff has not changed in the last couple of
But,
days. Okay.
Have you had any intimacy with someone with Ebola? And I'm like, I hope not. 'Cause, like, and first off, no, but
Oh my gosh.
Do you love anyone? Do you like humans? That's for sure. Well, my wife actually can't give blood because she was born on a military base in Germany when there was a mad cow outbreak.
Oh
I'm not
my
even
gosh.
lying. Yeah, apparently humans can't get mad cow, but just in case, you can't give blood if you were born
Wow.
in an area. Yeah.
Wow.
That's strange. And for myself, I pretty much pass out and die when I even see a needle. So
oh man.
they'd have to pay me a lot and give me like a whole bunch of cookies to
Oh,
give my
man.
blood or plasma.
Well, enough you do blood donation. I think they gave you a shirt, grandma's cookies, and like any kind of soft drink you want.
Little gift basket.
Hey, I'm up for a free shirt. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh my
I've got
gosh.
the best blood type, apparently. The type that can like be used by anyone. So, you know, I'm pretty valuable. I think they need to up their game if they want me in there.
Pay you double.
Supply and demand.
So besides me sitting in a shop mall spaceship, what have you been up to, Daniel?
Sounds so wacky. Well, yesterday I finished a Star Wars book. It's called Lost Stars, and it's by Claudia Gray. It was great. It was really good. It kind of seems like a romance novel between like two young people with Star Wars thrown in the mix, but it was so much more. It's really cool. I just loved how it panned out. The character development was so good. Like, I can't think of a book that has character development this good that I've read recently. And it also ties into the bigger Star Wars universe around episodes 4 and 5, and I think 6, I can't recall. But it's awesome, and it gave me a fresh new theory about who Rey's parents are.
Ooh.
Dun, dun, dun.
Don't
Yeah.
spoil it.
I'm not. You got to go read it.
And so is this like a canon book, or is it kind of...
Yeah, this book is in the new canon from Disney, and it came out in 2015. It's awesome. Definitely go read it, listen to it. I got it for free, of course, through my library via the Libby app. So that's pretty sweet. And other things that I've done recently that are particularly nerdy is I did a photo shoot of a Gundam model last weekend. You guys know about the Gundam model craze?
No, what's a
I'm not
Gundam?
familiar with the model craze. No.
Well, I mean, there's not new, but Gundam Wing and Gundam franchise have been making models for like years and years. I actually have some when I was a kid, and they're still going strong apparently. So I hooked up with this guy that has a model, a Gundam model that is not small. It's almost like 2 feet tall. It's huge.
Oh, wow.
And it's from the new series, the Unicorn Gundam series. I think that's the latest Gundam TV show. There are no unicorns, but the Unicorn Gundam. Yeah,
Plot twist.
I know you're disappointed,
Man,
but the Gundam Unicorn does have a spike on his forehead. So there's that.
that's probably why. that's
it.
That's it. Wow. Okay.
So yeah, it was a really big model. The guy painted it really with some awesome like alternate colors, and I did some really epic photos. And I'm doing a super cool space collage for it, which is actually for the owner of Alamo City Comic Con. So hopefully that goes over well.
Oh, cool. Okay, so it's a kit.
Yeah, these are model kits that you buy, put together, and then paint yourself. At least the more advanced ones, you have to paint on your own, which is kind of part of the hobby, painting and
No, it's
texturing
cool.
and decals and all that detailed stuff. Yeah, it's very meticulous but rewarding because it's there and it looks awesome. So I'm doing a really cool space collage with a bunch of special effects and 3D stuff put in there. By the time this episode goes live, it should be on my Instagram, I believe. So that's Instagram.com/Daniel Grove Photo. You can check that out. Anyway, well, let's get on with the episode. We're going to be talking about movies that we love that you, as a listener, may not have heard of. Or maybe you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's my favorite movie of all time. That would be cool too. But we are going to do our best not to spoil these movies because these are great, great movies. Like I call them gems. They just stand out amongst all the other millions and millions of movies out there. So we're going to try our best not to spoil these. We want you guys to add these to your list of must-watches for various reasons. We're going to talk about what we love about the movie and some interesting tidbits about each of them. So here we go.
That
So
works.
my movie came out in 1990 called Quigley Down Under.
That's a great
It's so fun to
name.
say.
Please tell me this is a kid's movie.
No, it's about a sharpshooter, and his name is Matthew Quigley. He's hired by an American Australian as like a rancher, and he actually kills the locals. Like, yeah, and he kind of does it for sport, and kind of does it because he doesn't like anybody else. But
Wait, why is he killing Aborigine people?
he doesn't like them. His parents. I think the biggest plot is it's a revenge thing that basically turned into a sport. His parents were murdered by the locals, and
Oh, okay.
I guess it turned into a revenge / sport. And so there's some pretty intense scenes in it for a 90s movie. But
Yeah. There's a lot of racism.
yeah, actually a lot. Quigley is not. That role is actually played by Tom Selleck. And he
Best
is
mustache in Hollywood.
Yep. He's an American cowboy. So he was hired by like the Australian rancher to come over and be a long barrel shooter. Matthew Quigley is played by Tom Selleck, and an Australian rancher hires him because he's one of the first snipers that can shoot like 105,000 feet or more. And nobody believes him. Actually, they get there and he says, I traveled 3 months to get to Australia by boat. So basically, you said you pay me if I showed up. Even if I don't prove to you I can shoot. So it already starts off with tension. And then he basically proves them wrong. And in the midst of the process, he's hired to do what I say when I say it and not ask no questions. And he has a conscience. And he actually forces him out to the bush. And there's a woman that goes with him that he saved earlier. And they basically are on the run, and they're left for dead out in the middle of nowhere. And he's very clever, and he gets the best of them even by like the simplest things. And quite honestly, I was reading up some trivia about this movie. Originally, Tom Selleck was supposed to play the role of Indiana Jones, and Harrison Ford was going to be
What?
Matthew Quigley.
That's weird.
So
Oh my gosh, that is so
they
weird.
both were offered
Huh.
the movies, and they both said no. Then they flipped. And so I thought that
Huh.
was really
Flip-flop.
interesting. So could you imagine for those Harrison Ford lovers out there, him as Quigley, and for everybody that loves Tom Selleck, him as Indiana Jones?
No,
That was
absolutely not.
Yeah, that'd be really
Indiana
weird.
Jones with the best mustache in the Hollywood.
Oh man, I mean that'd be okay.
No, I mean
but
he's
it's weird.
been in other westerns, but unfortunately, they both were doing movies at the time. This is not Tom Selleck's only western movie that he's done, and I think that was interfering with the opportunity for him to be Indiana Jones. So,
Mm.
but it's he basically becomes like the spirit warrior. Like the locals start calling people that like local people are trading with other towns and cities, and they get wind of him. So as he is out in the bush, he finds a town, and they're like, "Oh, we've heard of you." And he's like, "Oh, on a wanted poster," and basically like, "No, you know." And so he basically quickly returns to help before he destroys all his enemies. And at the end, they have their moments and back and forth. But what happened in this movie was basically not a top seller. But the budget was $20 million, and I think opening weekend they made $3 million plus almost $4 million. And the gross in the United States was 21 million. So they made more than they put in, only by like $1 million plus. But still, I mean,
Oh man.
Still, I don't know. It was like what Daniel was saying at the beginning. It's one of those gems that was kind of looked over, and
I've never heard of it.
no, it's
Yeah,
really
same
good. I
here.
think called Quigley Down Under, about an American cowboy that goes to Australia.
And it's Tom Selleck. What else do you need to know?
Yeah.
He's like Mr. Sexy from like the 80s and 90s.
Yeah,
All right, I think for the first of my underrated movies, I'm gonna go with Monster House. Have any of you guys heard of this movie at all?
I've heard of it.
Nope.
It came out back in 2006. The basic plot of it is, well, you know how in most neighborhoods there seems to be like a creepy house or a neighbor that the neighborhood kids like to gossip about and such?
Mm-hmm. Especially in movie world.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the inspiration behind this movie. So the creepy neighbor in this story is called Mr. Nebercracker, and he's voiced by Steve Buscemi. He's got a great name, I know.
Wow.
And he kind of looks like Gollum, sort of. He's a
Oh,
very
that's
Gollum-esque
nice.
looking old man. And he's kind of the stereotypical old man in that he will yell at kids to get off of his lawn.
Get
but
off my property.
yeah, but he takes this trope up to 11. He will run out of his house and chase kids off of his property the moment they set foot on his lawn. And if like any toy touches the yard, he'll straight up take it and stash it away in his house.
Wow.
So needless to say, he has quite the reputation amongst neighborhood kids. Then one day he gets taken up in an ambulance and transported to a hospital. And soon after, the neighbor across the street, who is a 12-year-old boy named DJ, voiced by Mitchell Musso. I keep saying voice. I failed to mention that this is an animated movie, CGI, all that. Anyways.
Yes.
Okay, so the kid notices some strange occurrences happening at the house, believing the house to be haunted. So he tells his sightings to his best friend Chowder, voiced by Sam Lerner. I don't know, it's a great name. I think his real name is supposed to be Charles or something. And Chowder dismisses his claims and decides to go ding-dong ditch the house to prove nothing strange is going on over there, despite DJ's warnings. Chowder goes up to the house, rings the doorbell, and then nothing happens. No, I'm just kidding.
Wah,
He
wah.
rings the doorbell and the lights the upstairs windows turn on. The front door swings wide open and like wooden planks around the door frame snap apart and jut out like teeth. So Chowder makes a break for it, screaming all the way while like a long red carpet from inside the house emerges from the door and stretches out, reaching for him like a tongue, but it snaps taut once they reach the street. So the kids run back to the house, screaming and all that. Once they calm down, the boys realize that the rest of the neighborhood is in danger of being eaten by this house since Halloween is days away. So they make it their mission throughout the movie to keep others away and try to figure out a way to learn what the heck is going on in the house and pacify it, destroy it, whatever they have in mind initially in the movie.
Awesome.
So yeah, I saw this movie in the theaters when it first came out, and I instantly loved it because it has like such a great sense of humor about it. It has an all-star cast in it, so the acting is really good. They have Maggie Gyllenhaal, Kevin James, Nick Cannon, John Heder in it, and they're all really good at their roles.
Is Mr. Nebercracker like the only one that can tame this beast, and he's actually saving the neighborhood?
I can't say too much about it. Just know
Okay,
that the
well,
house basically freaked out once he got taken away.
That's my prediction. You know how I love to make those predictions.
I know you do.
I haven't seen it. I'll watch it and see if I'm right or not.
Yeah.
Because I'm already building up a theory. I can't
Right.
help myself. That sounds like a fun, different. It's different. It's creative. It's kind of out of the reality box. But
Yeah, and what's also cool about this movie, it was filmed using motion capture technology. So all the actors performed their roles
Yeah.
realistically had the bodysuits on with the camera sensors and did all that. So all the movements in the movie look pretty realistic. Although I will admit there were some points where like the facial expressions look kind of weird at times.
When did this movie come out?
It came out in 2006.
Oh man, yeah. CGI
12
facial
years
stuff
ago.
was a little rough then.
Yeah, a little bit.
They were trying.
Yeah, and also it kind of has this weird looking aesthetic to it. It's kind of cool, the animation style, because they went with like almost a clay animation sort of look. So, everybody's hair is kind of like plastered into clumps. And I think the frame rate for things like the monster house itself seem a little jumpy. Like they intentionally made the frame rate for the house to look like it was animated through claymation. But all the other actors' movements, they're pretty smooth and such. So it was an
That
interesting
house
choice.
is terrifying looking.
Oh, yeah, you look it up.
I
Yeah.
just looked it up. Oh my
It
gosh.
is so creepy. It's actually pretty creepy for a kids movie. It's rated PG, but there's some scenes in it that are generally
Yeah.
disturbing. Even as an adult watching it again, I was like, oh gosh.
I guess I won't be watching this with my 5-year-old.
Not yet. No, I would recommend until she's about 10 or something. Because I remember watching this movie in the theaters, and there was like one scene in particular that made kids straight up cry. So,
Wow.
yeah, definitely want to make that movie something for the older kids. But it's good. It's got a lot of good humor to it. So I think you'll enjoy it whenever you get a chance to watch it in the future, if you do.
Yeah, cool. Well, speaking of children play a small part in my next movie, which is nice segue there.
Oh, man.
So my number 3, I'm working my way up. So number 3 is Artificial Intelligence, directed by Steven Spielberg, and came out in 2001. You guys seen this movie?
Nope.
No, I have not seen this. Now I have to see it.
It is a spectacle of CGI and Spielberg. It's just his stuff is just pure like visual art, and it's beautiful, and and also it's a good story behind it too. So it really was a masterpiece when it came out. I think it got 2 Academy Awards. I don't remember what exactly the awards were, but they were a big deal, and there's 2 of them. Rightfully so. John Williams of Star Wars did the soundtrack for this. It won an award for an original score for the movie. And yeah, it's awesome. So here's what it's about. There's a young boy named David who is not human. He's an android. And in the future, I believe this takes place in 2142.
Oh, wow.
And basically, androids are mass produced for anything from labor to personal companions. So in the story, there's a family who I think they lost a son, and they buy an android son to kind of help the mother cope and just get through life, and just, I don't know, just as a companion for their real son that they do have, who actually has like some handicaps. So it's kind of interesting. You see this contrast between like a human boy that can't do everything he wants to, and an android boy who can do anything. And basically, the interesting part of it is that David, the android and the main character, wants his mother to love him, like in a creepy, sentient way. Like he's not just following through his programs. Like he wants the mother to be in love with him, and it's hard to love an android because, well, it's an android, and it's they bought him at a store.
Yeah.
I'm not really doing it justice, but you definitely got to go see it. It is an interesting parallel to Pinocchio. I don't know why or how or if they did this on purpose, but I mean, it's almost like a future retelling of Pinocchio in a certain sense, because if you guys remember the original Pinocchio, I mean, that movie's a trip.
Yeah.
Like Pinocchio goes on this like epic voyage of this discovery and being lost and trying to be found and find love.
Into a
and,
donkey.
Yeah. And so this movie is like that. Like David goes on this just wild trip through this semi-post-apocalyptic world. And he's trying to find, his mother, trying to find a way for his mother to love him. And the ending is awesome. Everything in between is awesome. It's cool. So definitely check it out. Some interesting stuff I found out about it was it's actually based off of a 1969 short story titled Super Toys Last All Summer Long, which is such a 60s book title, isn't it?
Yeah.
Interesting name.
It's so retro. So that short story is by a guy named Brian Aldiss and Stanley Kubrick of 2001 Space Odyssey and other various awesome movies. Kubrick got the rights to it in the 70s, but he couldn't make a movie because he felt like the CGI was not there yet, which there really wasn't any.
Right. Yeah.
It was not existent.
Right.
But he was convinced that you had to do CGI of some kind for the boy. He didn't think a human actor could play the boy character, so he's like convinced that we needed CGI. It wasn't there, so he just put it on the back burner. He ended up giving the rights of the movie to Spielberg in 1995, and so Spielberg ran with it. Once Kubrick died in '99, he started really working on this movie. And it's just an awesome, underrated masterpiece, and I love it.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I've got to check that one out. I'm surprised I haven't heard more about that one.
It's cool.
So mine is going to be a comedy romance.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want
Rom-com.
Rom-com.
But it stars Ryan Reynolds and Anna Faris way back in the day, basically.
Way back in the day, you say.
Not that far. Okay, I'm sorry.
Which day exactly?
2005. So it's called Just Friends. Now it stars Ryan Reynolds, like I said. Now he plays Chris Banner, and he's always had this friendship with his best friend named Jamie, but actually he's loved her since like forever, and she's always considered him like the best friend.
One.
Yeah,
Oh, boy.
Sorry, that's when he's like chubby and like overweight, and
it's so funny.
So
And she keeps friend zoning him over and over, and he gets hurt at a graduation party, and he pours his heart on this situation, and she's like, "Wow, I'm so glad. I love you too, like a brother." And he's like, he gets hurt, and he's like, "You'll all see," and he gets embarrassed, and he runs off. He runs away from home. And
I'll get you next time.
He shakes his fist in the air.
he runs away from home.
See.
You'll see. So he like stumbles on his bike, and that's the last scene. And then they jump, and basically he leaves the city that he grew up in New Jersey, and he becomes a music manager whom everybody wants. And he at that time they start introducing Anna Faris. So when he's on the plane heading to Paris, his plane randomly has a fire, and they have to have a forced stop. And comes to find out he is about an hour away from home of his hometown, New Jersey, and he basically runs across his friends and basically ends up back where he is 10 years ago. But he looks different. He basically can get any woman he wants, and he's a very successful...
Gee, I wonder why. It's Ryan Reynolds after all.
He's a very successful music producer, agent, and all that fun stuff. I don't know. It was one of those movies that I think took a big hit because Anna Faris and Ryan Reynolds were in another movie in the same year. And I think this movie might have taken the back burner because of that. But there's a lot of funny stuff. Like I love Ryan Reynolds as an actor. He's funny. He's a great Deadpool. So you just think of the humor of Ryan Reynolds when I tell you this fun fact. So it took about 4 hours for them to put that 12-pound face on his face. Ryan Reynolds, and then Ryan Reynolds stepped out of his trailer and with full makeup, and a fan walked up to him and basically said, "Hey, is Ryan Reynolds in there?" And trying not to act like himself, he said, "Yes, he's in there." And
so funny.
Yeah, it's quite funny seeing Ryan Reynolds as a very, very heavy high schooler, and then the end credits are probably my favorite when he lip syncs a song. And I think that's
right.
That's the best. But
so, they had some serious outtakes with that.
Oh, I'm
that
sure.
Filming.
And with the humor you see in Deadpool, I'm very sure he's been like that his whole career. So
he's just a wild and crazy guy.
Right.
Great. Speaking of wild and crazy guys, I'm sorry. Have you guys seen Hidalgo?
Yes, it's great.
I know. I love Hidalgo, and Hidalgo's not a wild and crazy guy. He's a horse. But he's ridden by a wild and crazy guy out in the West. Oh my gosh. Okay. So it's a Western film based on the real life long distance rider Frank Hopkins and his Mustang Hidalgo. At the beginning of the movie, they are part of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, where they are advertised as the world's greatest endurance horse and rider. Now, one day, a man named Aziz, who is an attaché to a wealthy sheik, the sheik that he's speaking on behalf of is a custodian of the Al-Kamza, I think, line of horses, which are considered to be the greatest distance horses in the world. And so Aziz asks the show to either cease using the phrase the world's greatest endurance rider and horse, or allow Hopkins and Hidalgo to prove themselves worthy of the title by entering into the Ocean of Fire, an annual 3,000-mile endurance race across the Arabian Desert.
Of course. Where else could you race for 3,000 miles?
Right. I know, right?
Well, maybe Texas, actually. Texas might work.
Yeah, but it ain't no desert.
A little bit.
Not quite like the Arabian Desert.
Yes,
I don't know about that. Of course, they accept the challenge. No, I can't really go into much more because I'll be spoiling all the good bits of the movie. But of course, it's a 3,000-mile race across the Arabian Desert, and everyone is pretty much against them entering, since they're like Christian infidels entering their race, and they don't even like the fact that a Mustang is taking part in the race, since it's usually restricted to Arabian horses and such.
Yeah.
And of course, the elements are against them with sandstorms and swarms of locusts and all that kind of
desert.
fun stuff. Yeah, it's one heck of a ride, though. I don't know why this movie isn't considered to be like more recognition to it than it has, since it stars Viggo Mortensen. And this movie came out in 2004, right after Lord of the Rings, so he was still really popular at that time. And that's a big reason why I wanted to see this movie, because, of course, I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan. To see Viggo Mortensen's in another movie where he's like riding horses and doing cool action stuff. So
I see what you're into.
I know, right? It's no secret. It shouldn't be a surprise. It's a lot of fun. And what's really cool about this movie, too, is that Viggo Mortensen in real life is like a really, really talented horseman. Like he's skilled at riding horses.
Cool.
He owns horses. He's bought horses from the Lord of the Rings movies, and he even bought one of the horses that portrayed Hidalgo. And so he did a lot of his own riding and stunts in the movie. Yeah, a lot of what you see him doing in the movie, that's actually him doing all the stuff, riding bareback and all that jazz. So kind of makes it feel like it has a real flavor to it, I guess.
I love when an actor not only does their own stunts, but like is more involved in the trade or the craft or whatever their actor is portraying. Like, I love that. That's really cool.
I know, me too. I wonder if like one reason maybe why this movie didn't do as well as it could have is that since the movie is based off of real life Frank Hopkins, and he made all these claims. Yeah, he actually participated in the Ocean of Fire race and all that stuff. But there's no actual historical records that this race existed, which is a big shame. It's supposed to be like this 1,000-year race that took place every year, but there's no records of it ever existing. And some people like to say, oh, they just trying to keep it a secret, or it was very inclusive. But there's no way you can keep a race like that secret for 1,000 years, I don't think.
Conveniently, the only guy who comes forward saying he won the race is the only one who says it existed.
Right. So, I mean, while he was a very experienced long-distance rider in real life, having won actual races and been in the U.S. Cavalry as a dispatcher or something like that, yeah, he definitely was not the big hero that he made himself out to be, and this movie portrays. So that's a real shame, but I still enjoy this movie for what it is, as like a work of fiction. It's very entertaining to me. So there's that. It's still a fun ride.
It's okay, people. Don't get all triggered.
I know. It's fiction. Treat it as such.
Yeah, wait, what? It's fiction is not real?
Yeah,
well,
that's kind of...
Speaking of fiction.
Oh, no.
Oh, man, these segues are on point.
Yeah.
My next movie is a fictional movie.
Really now?
Sorry.
This is awful.
It's so awful. So awful, it's not awful.
Really?
My movie, my number 2, is Spectral. You can watch this on Netflix.
Oh, that's cool.
And I didn't say, my last movie, Artificial Intelligence, you can see on Hulu. So, forgot to say
cool.
that.
All my movies you can't find anywhere streaming, apparently, which makes me sad. Just rent them on Amazon.
Does stink. You know what? You should check with your local library. Sometimes libraries have kind of older movies that are decent for free borrowing. So
there you go,
I'm just a big library junkie.
Apparently.
I sound like a total nerd right now.
Yeah.
Which I am, but
well, it works for this
Anyway.
outlet, so
yes. I'm actually in a library right now recording.
oh my gosh. You just
Anyway,
live there.
back to me. Yes, they know me. So my number 2 is Spectral. It is a really cool movie. It came out in 2016. It is directed by someone named Nick Matthew, and he has one other thing on IMDb that doesn't even have a graphic. So I don't know what else this guy's been doing, but maybe not a lot. Maybe just IMDb is not up to speed. But either way, the movie was really decently done. It's about an American engineer who makes some hyperspectral goggles used by the military. So these allow you to see things outside of the visible light spectrum, ultraviolet, infrared, and I guess beyond that. So he makes these cool goggles. I guess the military buys them and uses them at a few places. And he gets contacted by a place in the East that is using them, and they have seen some strange apparitions science by using his goggles.
boy.
And there are also some strange things happening in this town. Yeah, so
Spooky.
they're like, hey, we need your help inspecting what we've seen with our recordings and what is happening in the city because there's some strange stuff going on. So he goes over there and checks it out. And they're basically what appears to be ghosts kind of roaming and causing havoc in the city. The locals are superstitious and they believe it's like the souls of the departed that died in like a civil war. And of course, he's, Mr. Science guy. He's like, no, that's impossible. It has to be something scientific. And he just cannot figure out the explanation. But eventually he does. Surprise, surprise. I'm not going to spoil it, but I love it because although it is pseudoscience, I feel like this story is doing something new that I've never seen done before in sci-fi. And it's almost a cool pseudoscientific explanation of one version of what a ghost might be. I just love what they did. And it just goes deeper, just beyond the basic premise and the interesting struggle that they find themselves in with these things in the city. It goes deeper and deeper. And as you finally get the big reveal, it's just like this it's crazy. It's just really impacting emotionally and visually, of course, too. But just emotionally, you're just like, wow, like this is awful and crazy and terrifying at the same time. So really cool story, very unique. The visual effects were done by Weta, W-E-T-A.
I know them.
Anything done by them is top of the line. Like they are the go-to company.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of big movies. If you're bored and want to see something amazing, just look up like Weta.
Lord of the Rings.
Highlight, yeah. Yeah, just look up like Weta highlight reel or Weta like portfolio, and you'll just see just incredible stuff from all the big movies you've probably already seen and did not appreciate the fact that they've done so much work on these movies to make them awesome. So they did the visual effects, which I'm sure cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
There's this one scene, though. It's kind of the low point of the film, but at the same time, it was sort of a high point because it's a cliche. It's I don't know what it's called, if there's an official name for it, but I call it the victory montage cliche. And it's basically the guys are just about to go into battle, and they are piecing together random pieces of equipment to make a super hyperspectral weapon to fight these things.
Yeah.
And they're just literally like clacking things together and attaching lenses and powering wires and power cells. And it's just like this like kind of an 80s like cinema thing where like there's lots of quick cuts and victorious music.
Lots of close-ups.
And you know what? They don't test their weapons, but they go to battle and they work perfectly.
Of course.
It's just such a cinema cliche, which is kind of weird because this movie is so unique, and then there's that. I'm like, oh well. There had to be a lighthearted moment, I guess.
I guess.
But I love it.
Or they just ran out of time and just breezed through that scene real quick in writing.
So if you like military sci-fi with a touch of horror and just some really cool pseudoscience stuff going on, definitely watch Spectral on Netflix tonight because I'm pretty sure you won't regret it. Pretty sure.
Yeah, that sounds up my alley a little bit, as long as it's not too spooky.
Oh, no, it's
which I wouldn't think it is. Yeah, cool. I will have to check that out.
Well, that kind of segues right into my next one, the sci-fi.
Oh my gosh.
It's kind of a sci-fi military, but more kind of like more Navy-based though. So it's called Stealth, and I have no idea why this movie bombed so hard. Like it bombed bad because the budget was $135 million. Opening weekend, they only made $153,000, and the gross, which I don't know how big that window is, they only made $32 million.
Oh my gosh.
And
that's a big bomb.
And it came out around the same time as the last movie I was talking about, like in 2005. And, there's a lot of big names in it, like Josh Lucas, Jamie Foxx. And I was just like, man, like, it's a good movie, though. I actually just watched it recently, right before our episode here. And it's in the near future. It's a Navy-developed fighter jet that's like artificial intelligence. So they have a unit of 3, and they only fly in 3. And they are flying like what looks like futuristic jets, but it's pretty interesting.
They're cool.
Yeah, they are very cool. And the cockpit looks really cool, like a lot of buttons, more like a spaceship than in a jet.
Yeah.
They get an artificial intelligence robot put into a jet. Now, this is more like a spaceship, to be honest. It lands and rises like a spaceship. And it sounds, I guess, to put in perspective, when it speaks, if y'all have ever seen The Odyssey, it sounds like that robot. It sounds like the...
I'm afraid, Dave.
Oh, 2001.
It's really weird. Yeah, there was a lot of fun behind the scenes and research and trivia about this movie. Like, they took 14 cameras. Now, they are in Alaska. They're in an Alaskan airfield. And there's a part of the movie that there's an explosion. 14 cameras are rolling all at once.
Gosh.
500 gallons of gasoline were used to explode this on a Alaskan airfield.
Oh my
They had to notify NASA that there was an advanced explosion, and if they needed to basically take care of the situation, because NASA could read it from their satellites, and so they started warning governments and stuff.
Oh my gosh!
And I was like, oh my goodness gracious! But that's insane. Like that makes me very happy when you get into practical effects. Like you're getting the government involved.
Oh my goodness!
It's kind of impractical, huh?
Maybe a little bit.
Have you guys seen this movie?
Yes, and it's been one of my long time kind of like underrated favorites too. So I'm glad you got it.
You know what's crazy is like, so back in 2005, they set the time to be forward in 2016. So we've already surpassed this time. So it's kind of weird because it's kind of like it was outdated, but outdated again. So we double outdated it.
This is the earliest sci-fi movie that I can recall that mentions quantum computers.
Yeah.
So, well, interesting little
And,
nugget there.
you know, so speaking of like aircrafts and all that fun stuff, when you think of actors, they have to get in a cockpit and they kind of have to maneuver around, such as for the effect that they're really flying.
Mm-hmm.
The lady, I forget her name, she was the only actress in the movie that did not get motion sickness.
Oh, wow.
Everybody else,
they had some like moving rigs,
like
motorized rigs
like a
they were sitting
gimbal
in.
kind of thing. Everybody else is puking.
Oh,
And so,
welcome to flying.
yeah. So besides the bomb of the, no pun intended, besides the budget, it's probably one of my favorite sci-fi movies that I have seen way back when, I think with family, and it was recently brought up to my attention with family, like, oh, you should totally do that, because I was actually having a stump of what could my third underrated movie be.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Hey, speaking of aircraft,
this is the episode of Segway Transitions.
Yeah, really. I think to round off my list, I have to mention Treasure Planet.
Yay!
Here.
Sorry.
I know. It's such a great Disney movie, but it bombed so terribly, and it's a big shame.
Yeah.
It came out in 2002, and it's essentially Treasure Island in space.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they took a few more embellishments in there, but we'll get to that. Yeah, basic plot is a teenager named Jim Hawkins, who is voiced by Joseph Gordon-Levitt in this movie. When he was a young kid, he used to be enthralled with the stories of legendary pirate Nathaniel Flint, and how he used to steal treasure from other ships in space and hide the loot on the mysterious treasure planets. However, in the present time, he's grown to be kind of an introverted, angsty character due to his father abandoning him and his mother as a
Classic Disney
child.
move. Classic.
Yeah. Well, at least the parent's not dead like how it usually is in Disney movies.
Okay.
Now, this time it's more sad where the dad just up and leaves and you don't know why. And that's what makes it so sad. And also, I think why kids should be able to relate more to Jim's character, just because a lot of kids nowadays go through that. And the kids who have seen that movie, as far as I'm aware, seem to fall in love with the character of Jim, because he's a pretty realistic character for especially like angsty teenager problems without going overboard or being annoying about it.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of really appreciate that about his character.
Yeah.
But he pretty much finds his only joy in solar surfing, which they starts out the movie with. I know. And it's essentially surfing atop a rocket-powered board with a sail attached to it. And oh my gosh, when they opened up the movie with him doing that, cool. I gotta say that was the coolest opening to a Disney movie I can remember. It's awesome.
In this fictional universe, space itself seems to have some kind of atmosphere. There's oxygen out there.
It's a fictionalized version of space,
no space
and that
suits.
is why, right? It's like they call it the Ethereum, and it has its own wind currents,
Classic.
breathable air. That way, that's why they can have actual pirate ships out in space with people walking around on deck.
You heard that right, people. There's pirate ships in space.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's pretty awesome, though. So one day, a spaceship crashes near the family inn that Jim reluctantly helps out at. He investigates and finds a dying pilot inside, and the pilot hands Jim a sphere and tells him to beware the cyborg before he passes away. And after this, a gang of pirates raid and set fire to the inn, and Jim and his mother escape to the home of a scientist friend of theirs named Dr. Doppler, who is an anthropomorphic dog-like alien creature, sort of. I guess that's how you can explain what he
Is
is.
he a furry?
Yeah, I would assume so. He doesn't look particularly furry, but he's got like a dog face on top of a human body, kind of.
Oh, yeah.
But there, Jim finds out that the sphere is actually a holographic projector of a star map that leads to the location of Treasure Planet.
Awesome.
So Doppler soon commissions a ship on a mission to take Jim and himself there, and the crew is led by an anthropomorphic cat named Captain Amelia. And also in the crew is John Silver, who is the half-cyborg cook. So, of course,
He's
Jim naturally just starts distrusting him once he realizes, he's half-cyborg. But their relationship throughout the movie is like one of the most interesting things about it, in that he kind of ends up looking up to him as a father figure. They kind of have like a pseudo father-son relationship thing going on. So, yeah, that's basically the gist of Treasure Planet. I don't want to give away too much more about it. But it is a huge shame like how much it bombed, because they spent, I think, $180 million making and marketing this movie, but it only grossed $110 million.
Eesh.
It is, it's touted as one of Disney's biggest mistakes.
Yeah.
And what's really sad is it seemed like everything was against this movie when it came out. And I think even Disney itself was not a fan of making this movie.
What sci-fi animated movies have they made? Like, can you think of any?
Atlantis isn't considered any sort of
It's,
sci-fi, is it?
Kind of.
Because that came out right before that one.
That was
I
a
think.
good one.
Um,
Yeah, I just feel like they haven't done a lot of space, and it stinks that this one really standout space movie didn't do good.
Yeah, and what's sad is like this movie is really beautiful and how
Very
it's
artistic.
animated, because it's traditionally drawn 2D characters, but everything is set on top of like 3D models.
Yeah.
Yeah, even the cyborg arms and Ben the robot, who's in the movie later on, is like flat CGI effects. So everything looks absolutely gorgeous, in my opinion.
They blended the two pretty well, and it was really fun to watch that.
Yeah.
I feel like
I
this
know.
movie, it kind of stands side by side with Titan AE, which would have been definitely on my list if I had thought more about it. But like they're animated, they're space, they're adventures, but they didn't do good, even though they're awesome. I just don't get it.
I know.
It's not fair.
I know. I really wish more movies were made in this sort of style, because I think it's really interesting to look at. But if you like read about the development for this movie, it sounds like a nightmare.
Oh no.
It went through about 10 years of development, and even well before then. I think the director and producer of this movie, it's Ron Clements and John Musker, I think is the other guy's name. They're the ones who worked on The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Hercules, a lot of classic Disney films. And they've been wanting to make Treasure Planet for years beforehand, since The Little Mermaid days. But Disney shot it down repeatedly over time. I think it was after Hercules was made that they agreed to let them work on this movie. So, yeah, development started after Hercules. And oh man, it just came out at a really bad time, and that is at the end of Disney's Renaissance animation era after the late 90s.
They're classics, yeah.
Pixar was going full force at that time. People seemed to be way more interested in CGI animation. People were losing interest in the classic 2D stuff, which is really sad. But also, Disney had horrible marketing for this movie, because I remember seeing one of the trailers for this, and they made it out to be some sort of zany comedy movie where the narrator is talking about the movie like this and showing all the stupid gags and all that. In the trailer, they weren't really showing exactly, how cool the movie is. And they released it in the same weekend as Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. After that had been out for a couple weeks, it was still going strong. Yeah, and
I'm sorry, but
it opened number 4, and that was behind that. One of the Die Hard movies was out at that time, and it even lost to the Santa Claus 2. So it lost to another Disney movie being out at the same time.
Ooh, so internal competition, that's not good.
Yes. So it's such a shame that everything seemed to go so badly for this movie, because it is so good, and it makes me sad that a lot of kids are not aware of this movie existing nowadays.
Yeah. Speaking of existence.
Oh my gosh.
And early CGI.
Okay.
Trust me, just go with it. Just go with it.
Okay. You tell.
My number one for my underrated movies, at least for this episode, because we may have a sequel in the future, a sequel episode. My number one is The 13th Floor. Crickets.
Ooh, that
Cue the
sounds
crickets.
spooky.
Yeah.
Is it spooky?
It is not about an elevator.
What?
Not that I remember. Actually, there is an elevator in it. So this movie is, this movie came out in, oh shoot, when did it come out? 99? Yeah, this movie came out in 1999, and similar to your last movie, it didn't do well because The Matrix came out 1 year after and just kind of grabbed up all the attention, and people were saying, oh, the 13th floor is a ripoff of The Matrix, you know, kind of like Equilibrium. They're like, it's a ripoff of The Matrix, but these movies came first. So it set the record straight. So this was directed by Josef Rusnak, who also did Godzilla in 1998, which is cool. I liked it.
Okay.
You didn't? It's okay.
I've heard other things about that movie.
Yeah. It's
I'm
hit or
not
miss.
sure.
I haven't seen it since childhood, so I'm probably just forgetting all the bad parts.
I just know there's a lot of fish, apparently, and that's what Matthew Broderick says. That's a lot of fish.
That's awesome. So this movie was nominated for a Saturn Award for Best Science Fiction Film, but it lost to The Matrix. Didn't quite get there. It was based on a 1964 novel called Simulacron 3. This basically covers the story of a virtual reality world, which is a duplicate of Los Angeles, except it's set in 1937. The virtual reality world is, and it's created by this dude who makes this VR. It's like this big new technology. He's going to sell it or make money off of it, whatever. But he dies. And in the will, somehow his friend Douglas inherits the entire VR, or the company that made the VR. So now Douglas is like, you know, he's the go-to guy, and he owns this, I guess. And he goes down this weird rabbit trail of murder and crimes and cover-ups and just weird things that don't quite add up. There's a lot of cool back and forth between the VR world and our current world. And then there's, the daughter of the creator comes in, and she's trying to shut down the whole thing for strange reasons. And it's just really deep. And basically, try not to give it away because it's just so good.
Yeah.
Reality itself is in question. I'll just leave that right there. Just walk away. But then I'm coming back because I'm not done. So,
guys.
So yeah, it's a really cool story about virtual reality and real reality, or is it? And yeah, I loved it. The story that it's based off of is one of the earliest literatures to mention virtual reality and really explain it.
Really?
So that's really some really cool forward-thinking stuff back from the 60s. I'd love to actually read that. I want to know what they thought of virtual reality and how it would work. That'd be really cool. Definitely watch it. It's a classic that you don't know about. So is it really classic?
That's great.
I don't know.
It's pretty much what we're saying here about all of our movies.
Exactly. Yeah. Cool.
It's a classic. You don't know.
Yeah. You don't know it yet, but it is a classic. Well, thank you guys so much for giving your input on your favorite movies that did not get the attention they deserved. And there are definitely, I have a long list of about 20 movies that I could have easily rambled on and on about.
Oh, man.
So we might have a sequel episode maybe later when we run out of ideas. So we'll just do another one of these. I don't know.
Why not? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. Cool. Well, thank you guys for listening to the Visionary Variety podcast. We love that you guys come back every week and are subscribing and downloading. We would appreciate if you would share any of our social media posts to help get this show out there. And be sure to comment and like, and also send us an email. Let us know what you think about any of the episodes, whether you liked it or didn't like it. If you have any ideas for future episodes that you would love to hear us talk about, let us know too. You can reach us at any time at tvvpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you guys. So thanks again for listening, and y'all have a great week.
$15,000 to 2,000 miles or whatever they say in the movie.
Feet.
Yeah, let me redo that one.
2,000
Sorry,
miles
hold on.
is
I'm
here.
I'm sorry.
He's sniping people in Europe from Australia.
I'm reading something that said miles, and I added instead of feet. Boy. Okay, well,
That's impressive.
And out of the gate, we got a blooper.
Jeez.
Anyway, so